Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and on today's video we are going to be talking about the RX 9060 XT. Yes, this is it's been a while since I've done any sort of GPU benchmark in the channel, and I even got the 9070 XT on release, and I think I never did like a review for that GPU on this channel. I did it for my Spanish channel, but I have not done it for this one, and I think it's time to fix that, at least with the 9060. I just got this GPU some days ago and I've been testing and testing and testing. I have to say my first impressions are really good. There is a lot to say here, so I need to I need to set my ideas correctly to explain what I think. And the first thing I want to talk about is about the VRAM. This is the 16GB version, and to be honest, I think no one should even consider the possibility of buying the 8GB one. I made a video a while ago, it's not in this channel but another channel, talking about how buying an 8GB GPU in 2025 is just a scam. And don't get me wrong, I don't think if you have an 8GB card that you bought is useless. No, you are going to get very good performance for that if you set it correctly. But my point is that if you are spending money on 2025, you shouldn't spend it on an 8GB card, because that card is already, from my point of view, obsolete, and it's just a way to get you money out of you that is not going to last. One thing is, oh, I have a 3070 that I bought years ago, and another thing is I bought a 5060 or a 9060 that I bought in 2025. There are two different situations, okay? Because I don't think that you should be doing any compromises due to the VRAM on your GPU. And don't get me wrong, what I mean with that is not like, okay, you're pretending that I should play path trace and everything and not do it because of the VRAM. No, what I think is that if your GPU, if a GPU of 16GB and another one of 8GB behave completely different because of that, then that GPU is not fit to have 8GB. Because if the problem was first the GPU and second the VRAM, then fine. What I mean by that is, if you had a 5060 or a 5060 Ti of 8GB or a 9060 of 8GB, you have to compromise the performance of your games and that GPU, because even though that GPU can do a lot more and give you a lot more performance, you can get it unless you sacrifice quality because of the VRAM situation. So I can get 100 FPS and X game, right, with the 9060 16GB in ultra with everything set to max, but on the same GPU 8GB version I have to lower the texture to medium and I have to lower shadows and things like that, not because the GPU is not capable, but because the VRAM has been full. So that's my point, okay? So having said that, before we go to the benchmarks, I want to tell everybody here that 70% of people who watch my channel are not subscribed to it. And I know I'm a small channel and I know this is annoying, but I have to ask everybody to please subscribe, like and share this video so more people come to it and I don't have to bother you. And please do it now, because then at the end of the video you're going to get some recommendations that are going to probably be equal or more interesting than this one, and you're going to forget about subscribing to my channel. So please do now. Okay, having said that, let's go to the benchmark. And well, we're going to start with Black Myth Wukong. That's a game that is not very AMD friendly, and even then you can see here how the game is performing on 1440p FSR 66%. Using the high settings, we are normally above 60 FPS. The game has supports also frame generation, which is not engaged here since I didn't think it needed, but you can definitely not engage ray tracing. This game, as soon as you put ray tracing on, really struggles to run. And that's just because it's an Nvidia feature, clearly. However, what I want you to look on this particular is, you know, where it says RX 9060 XT mem on the top left corner, you're going to see that there is two values there. One is for the use memory, and the other one is for the allocated memory. So pay attention to that, because that's going to be it's going to show you how important is the fact that we need 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, when we're testing Expedition 33, which is a game I love, I finished completely, and you can see you can play at 1440p using XeSS Ultra quality on high settings, and you're going to have a very good experience. I am using XeSS because this game does not support FSR, at least at the moment of making this video, so I had to rely on XeSS. But still, you're using the maximum quality, and XeSS normally produce better results than FSR 3.1, which is one of the my complaints about this GPU, is the fact that AMD is not giving the support it needs to many titles on FSR 4. Which we can use Optiscaler, but that's not the point of this video. Anyway, then when we test Dragon Age Vulgar, you can see here that we are a little bit under 60. There are areas of the game where you're going to get above 80, but there are other where we are going to be around 52. So, but you are going to be normally around 60 FPS. That's using ultra settings and the ray tracing on. So that's a very important distinction, because obviously you don't care about ray tracing. If you turn that off, you're going to get a much better experience. I do use ray tracing. I love ray tracing, and that's one of the sacrifices I'm willing to do, as long as I keep my frame rate around 60, is to activate it. Of course, you can do what you please. I'm just trying to show you some combinations to show you how I would run the game, and also how good it runs. Then of course you can make your own changes. In the case of Dying Light 2, for example, I'm using the higher preset the game has with full RT, FSR balance, 1440p, no frame generation, and as you can see here, we can stay comfortable above 60 FPS. Reaching even at some point 78 to 80 FPS depending on what exactly you're doing. So you see, this is one of those situations where I don't see the need to turn ray tracing on. I don't care about getting to 100 or 150 FPS, to be honest, but of course I understand you may differ to me, so that's okay. That's why you can turn off ray tracing preset, okay? So but as you can see, it's running very good. On Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, well, as you can see, the frame time graphic there is not very good, I have to say, but the game doesn't feel that bad. But I don't know, this is a very weird game, and it behaves very weird. Anyway, you can play at high settings, 1440p, using the 66 to 100% resolution scaling that this game has. Otherwise, you are going to get probably under 60 FPS. This is a good compromise, and it will run very well. And as you can see here, this is using 9 gigabytes of memory. So you had the 8 gigabyte version, this game will start stuttering like crazy. As you can see, even the frame time is a little bit crazy. It's not like stuttery. I don't know exactly what is causing that, but it's not the case. But when the 8 gigabyte is going to be very bad. On Final Fantasy 16, again, this game is using 11 gigabytes of VRAM, and you can see 13 gigabytes of memory allocation. In this case, I'm using frame generation to get to 120 FPS, and the reason is because there are areas of the game where I was around 50 FPS, and by using frame generation, I'm always above 100, and it feels a lot smoother, and it keeps the frame rate above 60 at all times, which is, I think, very important. But it also keeps the frame rate actually above 100 at all times. So that will always give you this sensation of smoothness, and I think, you know, if you buy a GPU like this, you're supposed to be using all the bells and whistles the GPU has. So far, this GPU has behaved really good, at least on my point. Now, Hogwarts Legacy is one of those games that has improved a lot during his lifetime, and now we can use 1440p FSR balance with the ultra settings plus all RT effects on medium, and as you can see here, we can get easily above 60 FPS. And I wish this game supported FSR 4, because I think the image quality will be much better, and or we can even be more aggressive and use FSR performance or something around those lines, and maybe even go higher on resolution, no? So far, I think this GPU is doing a lot of the good work, and as you can see, we're using 9 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is why it's so important, because otherwise you will be, you know, cutting your expectations and your performance just because you cannot use all that VRAM. Now on Horizon Forbidden West, again, very high FSR 4 in this case, because it's supported 1440p, and the game runs like a dream. Time frame wise, you can see it's very stable, and I even tested, and I can get to 4K lowering a little bit of the settings and keep above 60 FPS, no issues whatsoever. And the fact that it supports FSR 4 gives us the possibility to use like a FSR performance at 4K if you want to, and still maintaining a very good image quality. I know some people don't like to use it, you don't have to use it. I'm just giving you the option and my experience with the GPU. For me, I have to use everything. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, sorry, is a game that, wow, it really surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to run this well. This is also a game that uses FSR 4, and you can easily run a 4K if you want, lowering the setting. However, what surprised me is that we're running this good using the ultra settings. It's only the experimental settings that are on top of this one, and they use a lot of power. So if you're playing like this, you're going to have an amazing experience with this game and this GPU. If you go to experimental, then yeah, things are going to get under 60, but you can play even a 4K if you lower the settings a little bit. And you can see we are maintaining above 60 and above 80 almost all the time. The Last of Us Part 2, as you can see, is using 8 GB of VRAM, but I have seen it go up to 10 GB at some points. And in this case, once again, supporting FSR 4, we can use balance. The image is really good. We have the very high settings, which we will not be able to use if we were using the 8 GB version, because just on texture, you will have to accept less quality. So that's why it's so important that you go for the 16 GB, because we want this GPU to last for a while, for a long while, to be able to actually take the whole performance of the GPU, and 8 GB is going to limit what you can do. So once again, this is a very good result. And I have like the thing that this is going to become the Net RX 580, to be honest. Now it's Marvel Spider-Man 2, and this is a game that I push as much as I could, and the reason for that is because I wanted to use FSR 4 balance once again, but very high settings, very high RT, which is like the medium setting because it's only 3 settings. So this is the medium one. Frame generation on, and this is very playable at a very good quality, and we know this game is badly optimized and it's using already 13 GB of VRAM. But if you don't want to use RT, or you want to use the lower RT settings, which is going to give you just reflections, which is more than enough for this game, then you're going to get a much better performance. And you can combine that with high settings instead of very high, and you don't need to use like frame generation at all. Silent Hill 2 is another game where I decided to use frame generation, and the reason for that is because without it we were hovering around 50 to 55 FPS. It's a game that doesn't need like to be 60 perfectly. It's a game that will, for the nature of the game, is okay at around 50, but if you can activate a frame generation to keep the ray tracing active, I think it's a good trade-off. And another good thing about frame generation, that's why I'm leaving here, is I've used frame generation. Is the only way without using a mod that you can get 60 FPS cinematics. Of course, it's not the best considering you're going to 30 to 60, but it's an option that is there, and it's something curious to mention. So once again, this is another game that is running absolutely good. Alan Wake 2, we know, is a very heavy game. It's also a very Nvidia heavy game, and in this case we can use 1440p FSR balance, high settings. Unfortunately, it's FSR 3, no more FSR 4 games in the list as far as I remember. So as you can see here, we can go above 80 FPS in one of the most heavy areas of the game, but when you go to other areas of the game, this will shoot out to more than 120, as you can see here. So it's very important to have that in in mind, because if depending on that, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to play like this just during this area because I know after it's going to get much better. For example, if you wanted to activate some ray tracing, you will have to lower the settings to medium, and with just ray tracing low, you can see how much performance we're losing. For some, 40 to 30 FPS is more than enough for this type of game, but as I said, it's in this particular area because you're going to shoot out to more than 60 FPS in other areas. So it will depend on what you want, but I still think it's a fantastic result considering the nature of the game, and that AMD has never been, the best when it comes to ray tracing, and RDNA 4 has really improved the situation. It's not on Nvidia levels of performance, but I think by the next generation, AMD may really, because, well, we have seen how Nvidia has done this generation, get to the same level. Star Wars Outlaws is a game I adore, I love, it's a really fun game, and it looks amazing. As you can see here, we can play with FSR quality, high settings, 1440p above 60 FPS. There are some areas when we are traversing the game that you can get under, but it's also related to the data streaming, which makes the game look a little bit, lose some performance. But once you are out of the fast loading parts of the streaming, then you can get back to those normal FPS. So that's very important to have in mind. And as you can see, it's a game that looks phenomenal and run really good on this GPU, but without the extra features that are part of the Nvidia. You can activate them, but it's going to tank your performance. Assassin's Creed Shadow is another game that I think it looks phenomenal, even if you don't like the game or whatever, but graphically wise, it's a very good game. And in this case, I'm using the full RT option. As you know, you can activate like a couple of RT options, which are to have like global illumination on the whole game and also reflections, but you can also set it up to so global illumination only works in like your hideout. In this case, I have activated to run everywhere because I think that the global illumination in this game is transformative and very important, but I also have the reflections active. And as you can see, yeah, we are not at 60, a perfect 60 FPS, but we are quite close. So you can either remove ray tracing, be a little bit more aggressive with FSR, which I wouldn't recommend here, or do this and activate frame generation. And then you're going to always be around or above 100 FPS, which will give you a very good sensation, and if the game is going to feel very good. And if you are worried about latency or things like that, believe me, if you are starting to play a 60 FPS this type of game, I don't think you're going to feel the latency. I will understand if you were playing something like a very fast FPS or a competitive game, but for a game like the ones I've been testing, honestly, I don't think starting from 50 to 60 FPS that you're going to feel any extra latency, at least not in the level that is going to make the game feel more heavy or unplayable. So that's an option. As you can see here, we can easily get above 100 FPS. Now on Cyberpunk, I tested only ray tracing modes because obviously if it's run good at ray tracing, then you know it's going to run even better without it. And in this case, we can play with the RT Ultra settings, not overdrive, not path trace, with 1440p FSR balance. I wish this game support FSR 4 and the frame generation was for AMD was unbroken, because I think we could get a lot of better in this case. Cyberpunk is supposed to receive a new patch very soon apparently, so hope that that is included in there because it will make a huge difference. But as you can see, now you can play with full RT, guys, above 60 FPS, and that's really good. Now everybody can see this game in the best option. But if you want to play with overdrive mode, unfortunately for now you will have to accept to play between 30 and 40. Once again, it will depend on each one of you. But remember, on PlayStation console or Xbox consoles, you get at 30 FPS by only activating 2 ray tracing options, while here you're playing path trace overdrive, my friend, and you're having a much better experience. So take that into consideration. And now if AMD CD Projekt decides to add FSR 4 and frame generation to this, I think we can get above 60 and still have a very good playable experience. So fingers crossed, because this is looking good. Now, Indiana Jones is one of those games that requires a ray tracing GPU, and in this case I went like all crazy with it, and I activated not only high settings but also the path trace on medium. I don't know why they call it medium when it's actually the low option. It's like it starts on medium. Well, very weird issue, but anyway, as you can see, I was able to activate that. There are areas that are heavier than this, so it's probably going to be under 50, but I think it still is a very playable experience that doesn't need to have those 60 perfect FPS. You can get to even 50 and it still don't feel like any big issue with it, and you will have better graphics. But of course you can just turn off path trace, my friend, not a problem, and enjoy much higher FPS. I just love beautiful graphics. And the last game is another game that needs ray tracing hardware in order to be able to play it, and that's Doom: The Dark Ages. What a beautiful game. And in this case, we're going to be playing a 1440p FSR quality, high settings. The path trace patch is still not available, so I couldn't test it, but still, this game looks so beautiful the way it is that, I don't think I need it. However, when it comes out, the patch comes out, I'm going to do the analysis, because I didn't do the analysis for this game because honestly I wanted to do it with everything already in place. So as you can see, the RX 5060 XT 16GB is a beautiful and powerful GPU. Okay, so as you saw, I honestly love this little car. So the one here that I have is a Power Color Hellhound, which is a little bit more expensive than the MSRP, recommended MSRP, which is the around $350. I got this for like $370, so it's not bad. And as you saw, I could get 3.2 gigahertz on this little beast. It's bigger than I wish it was. As you can see, the PCB ends around here, and we still have all of these pieces for the cooling, which is good. No, don't get me wrong, but normally what I like about mid-tier GPUs is that they are a lot more smaller. However, you have the advantage of having only one pin connector, which is also very good. And it's a normal one, so you're not going to burn anything. So that's nice. I like it, but I wish it was a little smaller. However, it is smaller than most of my GPUs nowadays, like the 4090, 5090, and so on. Even the 4070 Ti I had. So that's good. So as you see, this 9060, I really love this GPU. I think it's going to become like the RX 580 of our time. You see, the 16GB version is going to be a very well sought after GPU in a couple of years. Remember, I told you about, okay? So as you saw, in most of the games we could play no problems whatsoever, with everything cranked up very good with FSR. And I know many of you are going to say, oh, but you had to use FSR in every single game. Yes, I did use FSR in every single game because, as I have explained many times in many other videos, what I'm doing is not a traditional benchmark. There are many out there done in a much more professional and better way that I can provide. So what I try to do in my videos is to show you how will I play this game, because I do like a lot having my bells and whistles. I love to have ray tracing. I love to have all the biggest quality possible. So I'm not trying to see how fast it goes. I am trying to show you how your games can look and at what frame rate when you want to get the best combination of frame rate, image quality, and resolution. And as you saw, I tested all the games at 1440p because I think that's the best resolution for this GPU. Some games I could play actually at 4K, okay, but removing things like ray tracing and so on. So in my case, I will prefer to stay at 1440p, having a much better frame rate and also much better image quality. But of course, if you don't like ray tracing, you can remove it, and then you probably won't need to use FSR in any way. However, I have to say, even though FSR 3.1, which is the one we used mostly in our tests, is not the best, FSR 4 really looks amazing. So you shouldn't, just discard it. The main problem I have is that AMD still doesn't support FSR 4 in many FSR 3.1 games. So, and I think that's one of the weaknesses of AMD, and I don't understand why. It makes absolutely no sense that at this point, so many FSR 3.1 games are still not supported to use FSR 4. Please, AMD, you are doing a disservice to your own GPUs. And I know that there is OptiScaler, but the problem is OptiScaler is an external program that people have to use, and many users don't even know it exists. So I am evaluating the performance and the experience that I get out of the box, because I think that's how most people are going to be using this GPU. So it's important that AMD start getting their work straight and really put FSR into more games, FSR 4 into more games, because it really looks that good. And that's one of the reasons I think this GPU is going to get all very good. So I will actually really recommend it, and I think it's my GPU, is my mid GPU for this generation. And let me get this clear, I have bought every single 60 GPU that Nvidia has put out ever since the 460 series. This is the first time I am not going to spend or buy a 5060 for benchmarking in my channel, a 60 series card. And that's because I honestly believe that product is complete and utter trash, because it should not have 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and it should not only have 8 PCI lanes or per 8, okay? It should be per 16. So those two things combined makes me absolutely not want to have it for my testing as the base GPU. Normally I have I test with 1060, 2060, 3060, 4060, but I think this is going to replace the space of the 60 GPU in this generation, because honestly what Nvidia has done is just inexcusable. So I won't be supporting that in this case. Another thing I want to clarify before ending is that if you check some charts, you're going to see that this card basically trade blows with the 7000 XT from last generation, which many people will say is a little bit sad that the 60 series of the new generation is not even faster than the 7700 XT from last generation, and I agree with that sentiment. However, one thing I want to clarify is that those comparisons are only about raster performance. So when you start playing with ray tracing, then this card is much faster. And then if you consider this one support FSR 4, you can be probably more aggressive with the setting on those games that support it. Like instead of using FSR 3.1 quality, you can go to FSR 4 balance or even performance if the game looks that good, and get much better performance at the end of the day. Of course, this is only for those people who likes those, to use upscalers and so on. But the thing is, you can be more aggressive and still get a much better image clarity, and which means that at the end of the day, this card is you are going to get more performance from this GPU than the 7700 XT. So yeah, I really like this car. It's going to be probably one of my favorite cars in my collection in terms of, of testing. I'm going to include it probably all the time, because I think this car should be, and I hope it becomes a lot more popular and people start, giving it more attention, because this GPU is really good. And with the 16 gigabytes of VRAM, I think it's going to have a lot of longevity. So having said that, I hope you like my video, and as always, see you on the next one.